It's so interesting to see where we've come in 10 years. You know, it's such a new, or I guess even in 5, it's such a new industry. So what about you, Bill?
Yeah, I pick up on that. What keeps me up, or what bothers me, or what I have the most trouble with, is addressing the silver bullet wish, or the silver bullet concept. This idea that, yes, there's a problem here, yes, there's a case, but all we need to do is ECA. ECA is our silver bullet. Or all we need is a behind the firewall indexing system that is going to take care of all our problems. Where does eDiscovery Council come in? The ability to understand all the different tools in the tool belt, all the ability to identify why one solution is not the solution that's going to make everything okay in this case. That's becoming, we're getting more and more solutions. They're better and better solutions, and but we still fight this sort of simplistic approach to eDiscovery, which is all we need is machine learning, and we're good.
Yeah. Best technology lies between your ears.
I love that.
But I think the thing we need to realize is, what we've basically all been saying is it is an evolution. There's increased understanding of what computers can do for us. My wife's a lawyer, so like watching her, in the '80s, instantly gravitate toward a Mac. Lawyers are real proponents of using technology. So when we get to the future discussion, I think iPads and mobile devices are going to be a real breaking point in eDiscovery as we understand it.
Yeah.
But people now, they understand. Okay, keyword search gets me X. Concept searching has been introduced. People understand the big picture of it, how it sort of helps, and what that can do. They know, like Bill said, that it doesn't do everything. They know kind of more or less when to apply it, or their experts do. I see this awareness building, which is very encouraging. And as long as we don't look for the silver bullet, realize it's a human process with feedback, then I think, we'll still be making progress.
Because it's technology and there will always be problems, unfortunately. All right. We're going to actually talk about the future now and all this good ACA, what's going on today. So, Bill, what, in your opinion, on any of the rule changes that would make, or are there any rule changes that would make early case assessment more viable?
Yeah, I think with federal evidence 502, we had a real breakthrough in the concept of there's got to be forgiveness. This is not a perfect process, and there's got to be rules in place that recognize that the electronic discovery and the discovery process in general is just an imperfect human process. That is what we need. We need more of that. So I can't say, I can't articulate a rule in 34 or 37 that's going to make that happen, but I can say that when you read discovery, when you read decisions that talk about 20/20 hindsight, and we're okay with 20/20 hindsight, that we need to keep the focus on just how difficult and complicated this is, and just how common and natural mistakes and missed documents are going to be. So every discovery decision that we read starts off with somebody saying they missed this document. We're starting from the very back end of the process and then throwing everybody under the truck with that missing document. The rules have to incorporate the idea of reasonableness and proportionality from the very start. And when we're looking at discovery problems 2 years down the road, it can't be with 20/20 hindsight. So I would look for, if I were to try and frame a rule that would help, it would be a corollary to the concept underlying Rule 502, but that would help us out in the preservation, collection, review, and production phases.
Oh, excellent insight. How about you, Steve?
So looking forward, I think the biggest impacts on eDiscovery are going to be cloud services. I think most large corporations are going to have no choice but to use a cloud storage service. Not because storage isn't continuing to be cheap to buy, it's because within the corporate confines you can't afford the electrons and the air conditioning to keep shoving more storage into your own data center. So buying it as a utility is going to be an absolute requirement. Plus collaboration. Everyone is using, and this is sort of driven by the mobility aspect, iPads and mobile devices. Those inherently are cloud viewers, so they are going to be generating business messages, and they're going to be storing them in the cloud. So what we're going to need to think about as e-discovery professionals are services where we can go to the provider and say, I need to know the kinds of metadata. I need to know for sure when documents are created, by whom, when they're modified. I need to know when versions are created, and I need to be able to find those. I need you to be able to produce those at certain amounts of time. That's going to be part of the service level agreement that we're all going to have to expect from Google Docs or any large provider. I think e-discovery services, litigation support services, they're going to have to move into the cloud because we're going to need someone with some level of intelligence on the other end of the phone to speak with, so we can say, I need, the following custodians, they're going to need to know what a custodian is. Like, I defy you to try and get anyone on the phone, if you help you if you use Google Docs, to know what a custodian is, right? So you need someone who knows what a custodian is. We're going to be able to call up Facebook. We're going to have to be able to call up Facebook because people use that for business messaging. And we're going to have to say, look, I need a way to tell what my business records are. It's to your classification question in spades, right? And that's a nightmare because a lot of salespeople do this guerrilla marketing, and they use Facebook as their regular email. And in that mailu, you got all your private messages with all your public messages, which are really business records. How do you tell? I mean, finer minds than mine up here can comment when I'm done about, the legal aspects of getting your hands on those. But just from a technology standpoint, you're going to need smart classification to say, yeah, this was definitely a business record. It was sent to this person on this date, and that's about my business. That's not a personal message. And then you have the whole aspect of Twitter and all that stuff with social media outside the context of mail and messaging, which is a nightmare. It's going to be a collection and preservation issue. So they're going to have to be legal hold services in the cloud. So all this is going to hit us like a ton of bricks.
Probably even hit us yesterday. We just don't know about it.
We just don't know.
Tomorrow.
It'll change how we think of data, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Microsoft is pushing us, and Apple both pushing us that way.
iCloud.
Yeah. I mean, they're putting money towards it, so I guess we just need to watch what they're putting money towards, and that's where the future is going to be. So, Chris, rule changes.
I'd like to see a move towards something similar to the electronic documents questionnaire, which we put into our rules exactly a year ago.
Which is brilliant. If you have not seen this, and maybe Chris could send it out, it's a really good document.
Certainly.
Yeah.
It's available on my website. The idea is a structured collection of data so that everybody's answering the same questions and an exchange of that information. In a relatively few cases in the UK, I think we may extend that in due course, but it's at the moment only for the very biggest cases. And it's meant to be early, not necessarily as early as many people would define the point for early case assessment, but nevertheless, really quite early. And it's meant as a precursor to an informed discussion involving all the parties and the court, whose real purpose is, what are we trying to do here? What is the objective? What costs are we going to come across that we may not otherwise have anticipated? What's difficult? Is there any point in going down that avenue for the sake of any party? Would we not do better just to focus on this handful of custodians, this date range, or whatever? Which you can't really do if you haven't got a structured way of collecting, of everybody collecting information in a common way. That again requires the judge to be interested in it and willing to enforce it, or parties perhaps to see that it's worth it for their own sake, because the corollary to having to collect all your information is that you collect the information from the other side as well. We're beginning, I think, to see that in the Western District of Pennsylvania. Yeah, Judge Conte was here last year with a nice line that goes something like, she says to at the end of an early hearing, is that your last word, counsel? Is there anything more you want to say about discovery? Are you happy that the rest of this case should be run on the basis that you just put to us? And she says quite a lot of times people say, can we come back in a fortnight, Judge? I'd just like to think about this a bit more. And I read something last week that suggests that they're formalising that and moving further towards the idea of the exchange of information between parties aimed at identifying a real objective. Yeah. And that would be a rule change that would be well worth having.
Absolutely. Well, and you mentioned your website. I think that's one of the things I would love to. Can you give them the web address? For those who haven't seen it in here, I definitely would. It's a great
The blog is my name, chrisdale.wordpress.
Okay. Excellent. Yes, if you haven't seen that or subscribe, I highly recommend it. I've been subscribing for years, and it's been very helpful. So, thank you. Yeah.
So I think in a dream world, you know, this would be easier, and I think a lot of corporations are faced with, yeah, this is all a good idea, but it's so overwhelming. I think every time there's a litigation filed, everything is fire drill. So I think it's going back and not just addressing the data that's for this particular matter, but all of the information that you have stored. And I think that's very overwhelming. And I think, you know, people that I've talked to in corporations that have, you know, so much data they don't know what to do with, I think they just take a point in time and everything going forward. And then when there is time, you go back and you fix and categorize that which is behind you. So I think if technology can show us anything, or somebody can come up with that great tool that can categorize everything, you create a document, and you store it in a particular location where everybody knows where it is. I know that I've talked to a lot of people about data mapping, whether or not they think it's a good idea, and does it then become discoverable, and so I would say no data map. But you know, you really do need to organize all of the data that you have in-house and get away from this fire drill that we're all under all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think the hard thing is it's human nature, as Brownie was talking about, human nature and technology. You know, and if we only had 2 buckets, would we put them in the 2?
Yeah, and it's very difficult and time-consuming, and I think you just need to make a commitment. And I think that if you get buy-in from somebody high enough in the company who says, no, this is it, this is how we're doing it, I'm doing it, you're all doing it. You know, I just look at my own email management. It's scary, and you know, I try and think about it. The end of every night, just try to organize so I can figure out where everything is. And I think that corporations need to go that way as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so what we started kindergarten teaching them how to organize their data. It's like you start teaching them how to make their bed at that point. You know, we start teaching them to organize because I think it is going to explode.
Well, you know, but I think that's a great idea, but I don't think within a corporation anyone will ever do that.
I know, that's the problem. Human nature.
My hope is that as these cloud services evolve, though, right, the software can be smart enough to learn from you and start making categorizations for you. I think that's hopeful, because that's going to be the differentiation one cloud provider has over another.
Very good point. Ronnie.
Well, a couple of things. I know the one thing you really wanted was a homework assignment. If you've not read Ray Kurzweil's book, The Singularity is Near, I really recommend that you get it and read it because he takes 4 fields, among them computing, and he shows how and demonstrates how the rate of change of growth in those 4 fields is going on at an exponential rate. And in some respects, what we're experiencing in electronic discovery is just a subset of this extraordinary amount of change. And so, to steal a line from Yogi Berra, predictions about technology are difficult because often they involve the future. And so that's a problem in terms of making a prediction. But last week, Judge Rader came out, and there was a mention of it with an e-discovery protocol for patent cases. It certainly wouldn't work for your average commercial case, but I think one of the greatest things that is going to solve the problem that we all face is to take and have groups that, for example, deal with commercial litigation or labor and employment or what have you, and work cooperatively to come up with the e-discovery protocols that are going to meet the particular needs of a large subset of cases. Rather than having sort of the trench warfare that goes on, I think if we were able to come up with those protocols, we could really make our life a lot easier. I think the technology is going to get there, and that's why I gave you the homework assignment. But it's the practice of focusing in, really being cooperative and developing these protocols that are going to be useful.